get this. Okay, page 146. I hope everybody that wants to be online is online. We are dealing with Parshas Vayetzei, Perek Chof Tes, Psukim Aleph through Lamed, 1 through 30. It is the story of the marriage of Yaakov to Rachel and Leah. But before that, Yaakov has to run for his life, right? What is happening? Oops, I didn't. Here we go. So Parshas Vayetzei, it's Perek Chof Tes Pasuk Aleph through Lamed. Again, it's the story of Yaakov's marriage to Rachel and Leah, but in particular, before that, it introduces it by telling us how he runs for his life from Esav, right? And he goes to the house of Lavan, and he's going to have that famous dream, right? We're told about the dream in the Aliyah right before, right? Okay, so now, Vayisa Yaakov Ragalav Vayelach Hartzav V'Nekerim. He's had the dream, how he just, it seems that this word is, he lifts his feet and he runs, he goes to the house of his uncle. And what does he see? He sees a well in the field. And so what does he see? He sees a well, and behold, there are 3 flocks of sheep standing by there, for this is where the flocks are watered, and a stone is sitting on top of the be'er, so nobody can get to the water. Water is precious. It's like gold, in particular at this period of time in this area of the world. So what happens? All the shepherds get together and they roll off. This is a heavy stone. They roll off the stone from the mouth of the well, right? And everybody can have water. And then they put back the stone. And so now picture this, right? They've watered, they took off the stone, they put back the stone, and now they're hanging around there, the shepherds. So Yaakov turns to them and he says, where are you from? Where are these shepherds? He wants to know where they're from. So they say, from Haran. He says, so do you know Lavan ben Nachar? So they say, yes, we know him. How's he doing? So tell me, they don't realize there's a relationship. This is his uncle. How's he doing? Oh, he's doing very well. By the way, Rachel, his daughter, is coming. She's right there. She's coming with the sheep. Then he turns to them and he gives them musar. Look, the day is still long. They're hanging around the be'er, right? They're hanging around the well. They're not doing anything. He says, look, the day is still long. Is it not yet time to bring the livestock in? Water the flock and go grazing. What are you sitting around here? Why aren't you working? Where's your work ethic, right? That's what he says to them. They're not doing anything. So he says, they answer him. They said, we can't do anything because the be'er, the well, is now covered with this enormous stone, and we have to wait until everybody comes back, and then we'll all join forces and we'll lift the stone off. That's their answer, right? So while they're talking, the Torah interrupts. It says, by the way, Rachel shows up. So Rachel was coming. Now Rachel is standing right there, right? With her father's sheep. Verse 10. And the Torah tells us, Yaakov takes a look. Rachel is there. The daughter of Lavan, his mother's brother, in other words, his uncle, and with her is her father's sheep, right? Vayigash Yaakov, and Yaakov goes forward, and he himself, not any help, rolls off the stone, right? So that everybody can water there, and she'll be able to water the son of her father. Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel, Vayisa es kolo vayev, and he leans over and he gives her a kiss. And then he cries, right? He raises his voice and he weeps. Vayegeg Yaakov leRachel ki achi aviyahu v'chi ven Rivkahu v'toratz v'tageg le'aviyah. And he tells Rachel who he is. He's her father's relative. He's Rivka's son. And then she ran and she tells her father, Vayikishma Lavan Shema Yaakov ben Achotov Vayirotz Likotov Vayachabek Lo Vayanashek Lo Vayivel Betov Vayisaper Lo Lavan et Kol HaDvrei. So now Lavan hears that his nephew is visiting, his mother, his sister's brother is here. He runs to him. He gives him a hug and a kiss, right? And he brings him to his house. And Vayisaper Lo Lavan et Kol HaDvarim Ha'ele. And Yaakov tells him everything that has transpired. Very famous line. Lavan then turns to Yaakov and he says, "You are my flesh and my blood, right? Why don't you stay? Stay with me for a month's time." Lavan then says, "Just because you are my relative, you should work for me. That's good. But tell me, what are your wages? I'm going to pay you." And Lavan, we're told, has two daughters. Leah is the oldest, and the name of the youngest is Rachel. And then we're told, Leah Rakot, and Leah has some kind of tender, that's how he translates it, tender eyes, but Rachel is gorgeous. Rachel's a knockout, right? Okay. That's what it says. Yaakov is Rachel, and Yaakov loves Rachel. He presents his wages. He says, "I'll work for you for 7 years, but you have to give me Rachel, the younger daughter." Rachel bitchak tano. By the way, that becomes a rabbinic expression. Rachel bitchak tano. What is Rachel bitchak tano? Detail what you want. Rachel bitcha, not any other Rachel. Bitcha, your daughter, haktana. Not your daughter, any daughter, because I know you have two. I want Rachel bitcha haktana, the younger one. So that becomes a rabbinic expression when you want to detail information and you don't want the other person to make any mistake what you mean, right? So that becomes I'm going to tell you Rachel bitcha haktana. When a rabbi tells you that, I'm going to tell you Rachel bitcha haktana, he means there should be no confusion here. Understand what I'm saying, right? But it didn't help. Yaakov did it. Vayomer Lavan, Tov titi alsa lach, mititi alsa leishacher. He said, "Okay, you know what? It's better to give her to you than to anybody else. Shivai madi, fine. You'll work for me, right?" Vayavod Yaakov b'rachel sheva shanim. So he works 7 years before he even gets married. Vayu beinav ki yamim achadim. And we're told this is a beautiful romantic pasuk. And in his eyes, it was like working for her, like the time flew by. But it's just the opposite. One Rebbe once, I remember in high school, one Rebbe said, it's the opposite of reality. In reality, when you're getting married, right, you're engaged and you're ready to get married and your marriage is 2 months, then what does Chassan and Kala do? They count down the days as if it's forever, right? Well, we have another 30 days, 29 days, 28 days, and how I remember one Kala told me she could even tell me how many hours were left, right? But here, Yaakov, it passed quickly. He had a mission, right? He loved her. He was working for her in such a setting. So now he says, okay, the 7 years are up. He says, give me my wife. I want to get married to her. So Lavan throws a party. His daughter is getting married, and he's going to have a wedding party. Vayi ba'erev, pasuk Chav Gimel 23. Vayi ba'erev, vayikachas Leah bito, vayavei also love, vayavei Allah. Night comes, and he tricks, of course, Yaakov, and he brings Leah in the place of Rachel. Vayiten Lavan as Zilpah shikasol, Leah bito shikah. Then we're told, by the way, Lavan gives Leah a shivcha, right, named Zilpah. Okay. Vayi ba'boker, now morning comes, he Leah. And Pitom, suddenly he realizes he's been tricked. It's Leah. You can just imagine the tone here is not a very pleasant one. He must have screamed at him. That was how I would say it, right? What have you done to me? I worked for Rachel. How did you trick me? Remember Lavan calmly would respond. If I was the producer of this production, right, on stage, I would have Lavan respond very softly, like he hasn't done anything wrong, defending himself. I remember Lavan, that's not the way it works here, my dear nephew. We don't give the younger before the older. The older goes first. But I'll tell you what, Malay Shabu Azot, let's finish Sheva Brachos, right? Malay Shabu Azot, and I'll give you, after 7 days, I will give you Rachel. But you'll work another 7 years. So he'll have to work for another 14 years to get really his obligation, his IOU over. Vayas Yaakov came, so Yaakov did this. By Malay Shabu Azot, and the week of Sheva Brachos with Leah was over. And he got Rachel, the one he loved, right, for a wife. And so Lavan also gives Rachel, his daughter, a shivcha as well, a maidservant, and her name is Bilhah. Lo shivcha. Gam el Rachel, vayav gam et Rachel Leah, vayavod imo ot sheva shanim acherot. And so Pasuk 30, it says, he consorted also with Rachel. He loved Rachel even more than Leah, and he worked for him yet another 7 years. Vayar Hashem kisenua Leah. Now God sees that Rachel is the one that's beloved and Leah isn't. Kisenua, it's a harsh word here. Kisenua Leah doesn't mean he hated her, but she wasn't the favored one. Vayiftach es rachma, and so God opens her, right, her ability to have children. V'Rachel akara, but Rachel remains infertile. But we're gonna stop right here because that's the next story. The next story is all about the Shvatim being born. That we'll deal with Bezrat Hashem next year. So what do we have here? We have a fascinating story, and Rabbi Soloveitchik wants to understand the mindset of Yaakov within this story. He understands Yaakov is, remember the beginning of the story. Go back to page 146. The story begins with Yaakov having, this is post the dream of the ladder reaching into the heaven, right? He slept that night in Beitel and he had that dream, right? And now he lifts his feet and he runs. Okay, he wants to understand the mindset of Yaakov as he runs from Esau and as he marries Rachel and Leah. Why do they become his partners to achieve his goal? In only a few words, by Soloveitchik notes, very few words, the Torah gives us the insight of we want to know what's going on in Yaakov's head at this moment. And number two, that's question number one. What is he thinking as he's running from Esau? Remember, he's snatched the bracha away from Esau in last week's parsha. Now he has to run for his life because his mother has informed him that Esau plans on killing him for what he's done. So he's now running. What is he thinking? That's what Rabbi Soloveitchik is asking. And Rabbi Soloveitchik is going to answer, if you will. Of course, this is my interpretation of the Rav, but I think what the Rav is saying is just in a few words in the Torah, we're going to get the insight. Question one. Question two, what or who are Rachel and Leah? Who are they? In other words, what personality do they have that he's attracted that they should be his wives and the matriarchs of the Jewish people? What is it? That's the question number two. What personalities do Rachel and Leah have? And why does he have to marry both of them? To create Shiftei Kah, to create the tribes of Israel. Okay? Those two questions. Insight into what is on his mind, understanding what making Yaakov tick at the moment. And number two, who are Rachel and Leah, and why are they the ones that become the matriarchs? So the Rav notes, interesting, or I should throw it out to you. What's the clue? How would you answer question number one? What's the mindset? What's he thinking? What's the insight into Yaakov as he's running from Esau? So the Rav says it's 3 words. Page 146. Vayisa Yaakov Raglo. And Yaakov lifts his feet. What does that expression mean? It's a very unusual expression to talk about travel. And you lift your feet. Well, what does that mean? That means you're in a hurry. You're running. Vayetzei Yaakov Raglo. If your feet are heavy, you don't move. That's the expression. My feet are heavy. I can't move. If my feet are able to be lifted, that expression of running, right? So the Rav understands this is the clue that the Torah is giving us to what he's thinking. You can only lift your feet and run if your mindset is to get somewhere. You're in a hurry to get somewhere. Vayetzei Yaakov.
Maybe that girl.
Right? That's what's Vayetzei Yaakov Raglo. Okay, so now in these few words, the Rav notes you can only appreciate this if you go back to 28:11 on page 144, just a page before. After when we're told he leaves and he's running away from Esav, by pasuk 11 in page 144. Vayifka b'makom vayolen sham kiva hashemesh. What's vayifka b'makom mean? Happened upon versus Vayetzei Yaakov Raglo, and he lifted his feet. Vayifka b'makom, as the Rav notes, is a moment of confusion. The expression of Vayifka b'makom, he fell on the place, if you will. How do you fall on a place? It means it's not planned. You're confused. You don't know where you are. You're afraid because he was doing what? He was running from his brother. Vayifka b'makom is the opposite of Vayetzei Yaakov Raglo. They have to be put on a blackboard as contrasts. When he begins the run away from his brother, he's confused. Vayifka b'makom. That's the expression. He suddenly appears at a place, not planned. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what to expect. He's fearful. He doesn't, oh my God, where am I going to do? What, a total confusion reigns. That's Vayifka b'makom. Then what happens between Vayifka b'makom and Vayetzei Yaakov Raglo? The dream of the ladder. He has a moment of prophecy. He has a prophetic moment between his confusion. He's running, follow me. He's running away from his brother. He's fearful. He doesn't know where to go. He doesn't know what to expect. It's all confusion. He doesn't know what to do next. That's Vayifka b'makom. Something then happens. He lays down for the night and he has a prophetic dream. Then Vayetzei Yaakov Raglo. Why? How could it be from confusion to you lift your feet when you know where you're going? You know where you want to get to. That's you lift your what?
He has a purpose now.
Now he has a purpose. Very good. And what was the purpose?
Get married.
Well, more than that, something that, yes, that's the technical. That's the technical. But two other things are happening. And Rashi notes this. So the first moment, it's like a ganav balayla. He's running like a guy who's running away from the police, right? That's Vayifka b'makom. He's transformed, and Rashi says it. Once he had been given good tidings, this is the translation of Rashi. Once he had been given good tidings that he was assured of protection, his heart lifted his feet and he became easy to walk. In other words, his mindset now transformed itself from Vayifka b'makom to Vayetzei Yaakov Raglo, to confusion to the ability to run. Why? Because God intervened and God told him two things. What did God tell him? I will protect you.
And I'll give you, and
what else?
Have a covenant.
I will be with you, but what else? You're the man who is going to carry on the mission of Avram and Yitzchak. You're the one who is going to continue the Mesorah. What is Mesorah? The traditions of Avram and Yitzchak. You're the third link. You're the man. So God appeared to him that night when he laid down, not knowing what to expect. God promises him, I will take you and I will care for you. Don't worry, wherever you go, you're coming home. So he's guaranteed protection, correct? And he's guaranteed he will be the third in the link, Avram, Yitzchak, and it will be Yaakov. He didn't know that because what did he rob, if you will? We don't want to call it robbery, but what did he snatch away from Esau? His first, yeah, and what else? The bracha. The bracha, the blessing. So while he's laying down, this is my thinking, okay? The Rav doesn't write this, but I think that this is what the Rav is suggesting. While he puts his head down that night and he has the dream in the beginning of this parsha, what do you think is going on in his head? Did I do right or did I do wrong? I did something my mother wanted me to do, but I had to use subterfuge to obtain a bracha away from my brother. Maybe I wasn't right in doing that. Maybe it was wrong. So he's laying down and he's thinking to himself, what? Did I do right? But now God appears to him. That's correct. Very important word. God validates the bracha. 100%. How does he validate it? You're going to be the progenitor of the nation. You're going to be the third in the link. You're going to be the third of the avos, of the patriarchs. You're going to carry on the Masorah. That's correct. And that's what happens that night. So what is his mindset? Totally transformed, right? From confusion, fear to, you said it before, he has a purpose. He has a purpose. When you have a purpose, what can you do? Vayetzei Yaakov Raglav. He can lift his feet. So in 3 words, the Torah gives you the clue about what the mindset of Yaakov is. He has purpose, so he can run. Okay? Yes.
It's the first time that his wife wasn't so upset with Lavan and he's tripped because he realized it's still the nation. It's going to
Well, he's pretty upset with Lavan. He is pretty upset with Lavan, but he stays. Correct. We'll hold off with that for 2 seconds. Okay. But then continue on in this pasuk. Okay. So we have Vayetzei Yaakov Raglav. Then what happens? Vayelach arza b'nei kedem. What do those 3 words? Vayelach arza, the 4 words. Vayelach arza b'nei kedem mean. And what? And he goes towards the land of the Easterners. In these 4 words, there are 2 lessons being taught, Rabbi Soloveitchik tells us. Lesson 1, where's he leaving from? Eretz Israel. So what would you learn from that? You might think that only in Israel can the Jewish people observe the Torah. Only in Israel can they be a Jewish people. What's lesson 1? Yaakov's being taught. Vayelach arza b'nei kedem. You can be a Yaakov anywhere, as Rabbi Soloveitchik used to say, and I remember him saying it, you can be a Yaakov on the moon. You're going to have to ask halachic questions when you're on the moon. Remember when we landed on the moon in 1968, I think, 1969. So we landed on the moon in 1969. So the question that was bandied around in the yeshivas with a chuckle is, how do you do Kiddush Levana if you're on the moon, right? Right? How do you say the blessing on the moon every month? And there was a little sefer published by an encyclopedic mind, Rav Menachem Kasher. I have it in my office. It's a little sefer. It's a very thin sefer. It's called Adam al Hayareach, Man on the Moon, the halachic issues. Interesting, right? Man on the moon, the halachic issues. Even if you're on the moon, you're going to have to ask because you're going to observe. So lesson 1 was Yaakov, Eretz Yisrael is important, but Eretz Yisrael is not the total goal. It's one goal in the bigger picture of Jewish destiny. It's not the total goal. Okay, 1 second. So Yaakov is being taught that, and we're being taught that. Both, number 2, Rabbi Soloveitchik points out, Vayelach arza b'nei kedem. There are 2 Jews in Chumash Bereshis who we can call the Jews of Galut, of the diaspora. Who are they? Yaakov and his son, Yosef. But they're different experiences in Galut, in the diaspora. Yaakov's experience overwhelmingly is oppression, poverty, It is true at the very end, he becomes very wealthy. But his experience, if you were painting the picture for the 21 years he's in the house of Lavan, it's oppression, it's poverty, it's cold. It is a very difficult experience. It's a negative experience. Yosef, he starts off being thrown into the pit, right? But Yosef is the Jew who is in Galut, and he's affluent. He's successful. He rises to the top of his experiences, right? His success. He's Mr. Success. Two different Jews. So Soloveitchik says that's why the Torah is telling us these experiences. Lesson number 2. Lesson number 1 is that Torah is kept everywhere, even outside of Eretz Israel. Lesson number 2, understand Galut can be an experience in poverty or in affluence, and you both have to know how to respond. And so Yaakov represents the one in poverty, Yosef represents the one of wealth. And as Rabbi Soloveitchik is writing this in the 70s, Rabbi Soloveitchik is giving the shir in the 60s and 70s, he says, well, which one just talks to us today in America as Jews are sitting here? The Yaakov or the Yosef? Yosef becomes our model. And interesting, by the way, what was Rabbi Soloveitchik's name? Yosef Dober, right? It's just interesting little side point. He was fascinated. He wrote the most beautiful treatment of Yosef than I think he wrote of anybody else. But okay, so that's lesson number 2. Let's, yeah.
Yaakov twice left Israel. And for those 2 things is for a purpose of building up.
Okay.
So here and also later to Mitzrayim.
Yeah. Okay, 100%. And the second time, he didn't think he was going, well, we'll talk about that. But the second time, he thought he was just going to go for a visit, see his son, and he's going to return. He doesn't realize the last 17 years of his life, he's going to end up in Mitzrayim and die. Okay, continue on to verse 16. So we answered our first question, which was what was the mindset of Yaakov, right? So now we're told with the mindset of Yaakov, what was he thinking? And now he's going to meet his 2 wives. So we're told in Pasuk Tez Zayin on page 150, verse 16, Ulelavan shtei banot. Lavan has 2 daughters. Shem Hagidolah, Leah. Shem Hagidolah, Leah. Leah is the name of the oldest. What does Leah mean? Leah, the shoresh of Leah, Lamed Aleph, means to be tired. Take a look in Exodus chapter 7:18. 7:18. Go to Zion in Shemos. Zion Yud Ches. I'll show you something fascinating. Zion, I'm going to give it to you in 2 seconds. Zion Yud Ches is page 326.
My hidden name is Leah.
Okay. Are you the oldest in your family?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm named after my grandmother.
Well, if you're the oldest, it makes a lot of sense, as you're going to see. He's talking about the plague, right? Of what's happening with Dam. Vinil-u. What is Vinil-u? Mitzrayim lishtos mayim min hayor. And Egypt will grow weary. Nil-u. What is the shoresh of Nil-u? Lamed Aleph, just like Leah. Vinil-u. So Rabbi Soloveitchik points out, Vinil-u took 2 seconds. Rabbi Soloveitchik points out, being the eldest comes with a sense of responsibility. She conscientiously assumed this obligation. She's the older of the 2, and it weighed upon her. It therefore took its toll. Leah is reflecting the reality of her life. She was the older one, being the older one. Remember, he has no sons that we know of at this point. We only know of 2 daughters. He does have sons, we're told later. But okay, and she took the leadership role, and it was evident to everybody that saw her that she was the older. Shem Hagidolah, the name of the one who was older, Leah. Leah reflected her personality, or as Rabbi Soloveitchik writes, and I quote him, this constructive fatigue constructive fatigue. She's not just tired. It's constructive fatigue is the sign of authority, of management, of power, of self-assertion. If man has no responsibility, he will never experience being fatigued after a day of constructive work. It's true. Man has no responsibility. He will never experience being fatigued after a day of constructive work. You are fatigued because you've put in a long day and you're responsible. Leah represented this type of fatigue. It defined who she was. This is a reflection of which attribute? We talked about this last week, of gevurah. Of gvurah. What's gvurah? Strength. That's correct. Who did we say was of the, that's correct. Avraham was chesed. Yitzchak is gvurah. Yaakov is emes. Correct? And of the imaot, who is the one who represents gevurah? Determination. Remember, that's how I gave the word is not only strength, but it's determination. Who is determined? It's Leah, because Leah is the one who's fatigued from responsibility. She carries, you can see. Rabbi Soloveitchik used to talk about kavod. You give a person kavod. What's kavod? Honor? Heavy. Kaved is kavod, comes from the word kaved. So the Rav used to say, you can see the person is carrying upon their shoulders something that's heavy, and you want to help them. You want to respect them. So you stand up, you help them, etc., etc. Correct? That is Leah. Leah is fatigued because she takes upon herself the determination, and we're going to see that. Oh, she has determination, right? Okay, continue on. V'shem aktana. What does Rachel mean? Sheep. Sheep. Tell me, a lamb, sheep. A lamb is a quiet animal. Its wool is shorn. It's used to benefit others. In other words, the sheep is exploited, as Rabbi Soloveitchik notes, so man can clothe himself. Rachel's life was one of being a quiet woman, restrained, sacrificial life she represents. She's the lamb, the sacrificial lamb. She is the one who dies young, correct? Thereby personifying the attribute that Avraham projected, chesed. You're giving to others. Leah represents the gvura of Yitzchak, and Rachel represents the chesed of Avraham, because she's giving. She's constantly giving others. V'shem haktana Rachel. So in those two, you have a very important clue why they're going to be needed, why both wives are going to be needed as Yaakov's wives. Continue on. Next pasuk 17. Then we're told, Veinei Leah Rakot. What is Leah Rakot? Einei Leah Rakot. Her eyes were soft. So Rashi quotes the Medrash. What Rashi says, she was constantly crying. Why was she crying? The Medrash Rashi says she was crying because she realized she was the older. Yitzchak had two sons. Older was named Esau. Younger was named Yaakov. She figured older goes to the older. Yaakov gets the younger. Rachel's going to get Yaakov. She cried. She didn't want, according to the Medrash. That's Einei Leah Rakot, right? As Rabbi Soloveitchik says, most girls in this situation, argues the Rav, would resign themselves to their fate. Why would they cry? Not Leah. Under no circumstance is she willing to accept the outcome as it's presented to her. She conspires with her father, Lavan, to fool Yaakov. We always have to remember that Lavan could not have snuck in Leah unless Leah played along. Leah not only plays along, Leah's part and parcel of the plan. We'll talk about Rachel, 2 seconds. On the other hand, you were going to talk about that in 2 seconds. We must know that if she could have achieved her marriage in a conventional form, what would Leah have done? She would have done it. She's not interested in subterfuge at all. She never would have resorted to subterfuge. She was driven to be the determination. What's gvura? Determination. She was determined to be the mother of Knesset Yisrael, of the tribes. She was determined to do everything to accomplish her goal. It was only through her assertiveness, the Rav notes, that she was able to achieve her dream. And that's why you're told, Einei Leah Rakot. She doesn't accept what others would accept because she's the attribute of determination of Gura.
But she doesn't have Nebuah.
Who says that she didn't have Nebuah? Who says that? We're not told here, but it would appear that she doesn't even have to have Nebuah. Go away from Nebuah. She was told that what? That there is two sisters and two brothers. She was told about her family. They knew. Simple. They knew that there were two boys. There was a Yitzchak and Rivka. Rivka, the aunt. Remember, Lavan is his sister. So Rivka, the aunt, had two boys. Yaakov, Esav and Yaakov. Oh, they have two girls. Oh, we know that so far, every day Yitzchak came to get a Rivka. Eliezer came to get Rivka. Oh, one day they'll be showing up too. There's a good track record here. In that family, they want to marry the women from our community, our family. Oh, so they're marrying family? So that's her determined. But she's determined not to allow her destiny to be what everybody else would have accepted. She doesn't accept because she's determined. Continue on. Pasuk Chav Gimel. Let's go to 23. Vayi ba'erev. So now it's night. Vayikach es Leah bito. It's the night of the marriage when Rachel and Yaakov were supposed to get married. But that's not what Lavan does. He takes Leah, his daughter, Vayaveo tol Elav, and they get married, right? So motivated by determination, by the attribute of Gvura, Leah spares nothing in accomplishing her destiny. When you read this, you forget one little thing, usually, when it's read superficially. Leah risked a lot that night. What happens if she's caught in her subterfuge? It would have blown up in her face, Rabbi Soloveitchik notes. It would have been over for her. Yaakov wouldn't have ever agreed, right? But she's willing to risk. It's a risky operation that she's going through. We just read it as an interesting, child story, if you will, but it's not a child story. It's the determination, what? Who? Yaakov knew what? No. Well, why do you say that? The simple pshat of the pasuk does not suggest that. Does not suggest that at all. So I'm going to deal with the simple pshat of the pasuk. That you want to go and suggest that, you're going to have to give me a clue within the text that would suggest that. But it's not suggested. I don't think so. It's Leah's risking everything. Vayikach Leah bito, Rabbi Soloveitchik points out, you have to remember Leah's risking everything. Leah, therefore, is courageous. When you go in for a risk like this, knowing she could have turned to her father and said, like, who argued with when they were doing something in subterfuge? Yaakov argued with Rivka. Yeah, Rivka says, I want you to get dressed like your brother and I want you to go. And what does Yaakov say? Yes, mommy? Is that what he says? No, he said, no, mommy. What you want me to do? What? I'm going to get caught. This is going to blow up in my face. So Rivka says, don't worry, you're not going to get caught. And if anything goes wrong, I'll take it upon me. Thank you very much. But I'm the butt of that. But Yaakov agrees. But Yaakov doesn't like it. What about Leah? Leah's doing the same thing that Yaakov did. There's a biblical echo here, isn't there? Yaakov, you did subterfuge. You're going to midah keneged midah, right? Act for act is what you're seeing. It's what Rabbi Feldman from Georgia, Rabbi Feldman Sr. Why am I blanking on his first name? Emmanuel, who lives in Eretz Israel. Emmanuel Feldman has a book worth your buying, by the way, if you can get it. I don't know. I have it in my library from years and years ago when he published it. It's called The Biblical Echo. The Biblical Echo. And he goes through stories in the Torah where you constantly hear an echo. In other words, it seems that these stories repeat and repeat in different versions. And what is their meaning of them? It's a very good book. It's what's the meaning of each time when there's the biblical echo. Here is the biblical echo that we can understand. And who notes it? Lavan notes it, right? To Yaakov. What are you telling me? What are you screaming at me? That's not the way we do it here. Maybe you do it in your house that way, and you sneak, you trump over the older. Here we treat the older, you hear the musar. You hear the musar. Here we treat the older nicely. We give kavod to the older. Isn't that what he answers in that pasuk? Okay, continue on. Pasuk chafei. So verse 25. Vayehi baboker v'nehi Leah. And that morning it was Leah. Vayomer el Lavan mazal tasita li. And so he says to Lavan, he challenges him, what in the world did you do to me? Hello, Barachel about a team. Didn't I work for Rachel? And why did you trick me? There's another part of the story that only the Medrash fills in. And without the Medrash, you're left hanging, that you don't understand, the Rav notes. And that is appreciating the role of Rachel in this story. The Torah doesn't tell you about the role of the Rachel. The Medrash fills it in. It's a momentous night. Everything's going to change only because one person saved Leah's neck, because she would have been discovered. Who is that? Rachel, and it's all in silence, which Rachel represents. She's the lamb, the sacrificial lamb. Exactly. Remember that. What did Rachel do that is utterly amazing? So the Medrash, in its introduction to Eicha Rabbah, tells a fascinating story. The Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed, the first bias, first temple, and all of our major historic figures come to the Ribono Shel Olam, arguing that the Jews are going to go into Golus, but they must return. You must bring them back. Using the psukim from Yirmiyahu, by the way, when do we read that? As a Haftorah, the second day Rosh Hashanah. Remember, it's my favorite Haftorah of the whole year. Tishavu vanim b'gvulam, Rachel mevaka al banel. Rachel's crying for her children. God says, stop crying, your children are going to return. Tishavu vanim b'gvulam. Don't worry, they're going to come back. It's the most magnificent in poetry and just in paper, in Jewish history. It's what we should be able to relate to that Haftorah more than anyone else, because we've seen it. We're living it, right? So what does Rachel do? So the Medrash says, Avram comes, Hashem rejects his plea. Yitzchak comes, Hashem rejects his plea. Yaakov comes, Moshe comes, Aaron comes. Everybody, major historic figures. Hashem says, no, I'm not listening to you. Rachel mevaka al banel. The Medrash uses the psukim from Yirmiyahu, from Perek Lamed Aleph, psukim Yud Dalid Tes Vav and Tes Zayin. And the Medrash weaves those psukim that says, Rachel comes. Now Rachel is crying. Rachel, tears are rolling down her face, the Medrash says. Hashem says, what do you want, Rachel? Whatever you want, I will give you. And the Medrash says, why Rachel? Why Rachel? Because Rachel saved the neck of her sister. She did something quiet that nobody would have ever known, because the Torah doesn't tell it to us. There's no text that tells us. How did Leah succeed that night? Because Rachel had signs with her. They knew who Lavan was. Rachel knew who Lavan was. Yaakov already knew who Lavan, his uncle, was. So they had signs, right? That they would show each other, that they would know that it was her, right? So Rachel shared those signs, if you will, those secret signs, the code with Leah, so that she wouldn't be embarrassed. Wow. The Medrash says, for that reason, Rachel is listened to. The compassion towards a sister is what saves the night and saves Jewish history, if you will. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing to listen to it. So this teaches us a number of lessons. One, Hashem, by the way, accepts the interpersonal act of kindness between two people as more important than any other historic act. Isn't that correct? Okay, so it teaches us three lessons, I believe. A, we don't understand the cheshbonos of God. Why is God so impressed with a small little act between two girls, two sisters? That is going to change Jewish history and transform Jewish history. And Moshe comes, he's not listened to. Aaron comes. Give me a break. How do we know? Oh, because we don't know the cheshbonos, the way that God runs the world. We don't know what's big and what's small. What we think is big in the eyes of God is small. And what we think is small in the eyes of God is big. Eyes of God are not man's eyes. God works on a different plane. Lesson 1. Lesson 2, what we call small acts of kindness can be more powerful and impactful than we could ever imagine. Small acts of kindness can change a world. Number 3, heroism is often manifested in the daily acts of kindness that we do, not only in spectacular actions and spectacular moments. Those are all lessons from this story of Rachel and Leah. So Rachel saves the day for Leah. She saves Jewish history. But the Medrash tells it to us because the Torah is silent. Torah doesn't let you know that, which totally fits into the personality of Rachel when we dealt with Rachel's name. Finally, the last pasuk that I want to deal with, on pasuk Chav Ches 28, on page 152. Vayas Yaakov, Cain, right? Vayas Yaakov. 1 second. Vayas Yaakov, Cain, Vayimalei Shvua Azos, Vayiten Lo Es Rachel Bito Lo Liisha. And Yaakov did exactly what Lavan said. After wait Sheva brachos, then I'll give you Rachel. He does it and he works another 7 years as well. The Rav explains, now we can appreciate why Yaakov had to marry. Remember, my 2 questions at the very beginning were, what's the mindset of Yaakov? And we answered that. Vayifka b'makom versus Vayiso Yaakov Raglov, right? And we got a sense of what Yaakov was thinking, okay? Now, why? What was question number 2 that the Rav had to deal with in these psukim, these 28 psukim? Why did Yaakov have to marry both women? Why was that so required? Obviously, destiny made it that he had to marry the puppeteer, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is moving us around, right? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, no, you're going to marry 2 women. You're going to marry both sisters. The Rav explains now we can appreciate why Yaakov needed to marry both. Only together, they offer a fusion of an attribute called Gvura. Who's that? Leah. Chesed, who's that? Rachel. Gvura and Gvura and Chesed fused together, create a new attribute called Tiferet, glory. What's the Jewish people? The Jewish people, Yaakov and his 12 sons, are compared to Tiferet, the glory. But to get to glory, you have to have a marriage of Gvura and Chesed together, and then you get Tiferet. And that's how the Rav understands this whole story. So to wrap up, and then I'll take questions. To wrap up, we asked 2 questions from the Rav's perspective as reading this, and he saw the clues in just a few words. He wanted to understand what was Yaakov thinking on the night that he ran away from his brother. So he contrasts Vayisa Yaakov Raglov, that he lifts his feet, to the earlier description by Yifka Bamakom. One, he was confused, he was fearful, and no, now he has purpose. What's his purpose? To carry on the mission. And now he also realizes what I told you. I think he's a little relaxed from realizing, did I do right by listening to my mother? I did subterfuge. I used subterfuge to get the brachos. Maybe that was wrong. Now he realizes it's okay. It's being endorsed by whom? Who's giving the stempel? By God. That's not a bad stempel, right? That's a good mashliach. Good, right? It's being signed, right? Okay, God, I think so. And then the second question was, and who were these 2 women, Rachel and Leah? And we saw the difference between the personalities and the determination. And we remember, don't just read this as a child story, but Leah is so determined, she's willing to risk everything because she's determined to be a mother in Knesset Yisrael. And she becomes the main mother, doesn't she? Rachel does not become the main mother. Interesting, right? Rachel doesn't. It's Leah who produces whom? most of the Shvatim, she gives birth to
Yehuda.
6, and she gives birth to Yehuda. And Yehuda becomes the leader and the progenitor of the
The king.
Mashiach, of David Melech Israel, right? Comes from Yehuda, 100%. So that's the mother of Klal Yisrael. Rachel is not the mother. But Rachel, I mean, in terms of numbers, but Rachel is Mevaka Alba now, right? Okay, so we see it all fused together. Zura and Chesed produces Tiferet. Chana.
He
Your
was
question.
also given the set.
Yes.
So he is.
Yes. Yosef and Yehuda go head on until what? Until what happens? They join as brothers. But there's a lot of tension until they get there, but they're going to join as brothers, right? Join as brothers.
I just wanted to
One
ask.
second, Marshall. Yes, Hannah.
What's the word of Leah? You said Le, Lamed, Aleph.
Right. Lamed Aleph.
So it,
Right.
it has only 2 letters. The
Yeah.
word of letters
Usually has 3.
3,
Right.
and this one is only 2.
Right.
Which is the.
It's unusual. It's unusual. Yes, Marsha.
Yeah, I have a question, which I don't know if there's an answer to. Why was Yaakov writing right away? Lavan didn't say you have to work 7 more years for Rachel, and Yaakov complained to him that he was tricked. So why did he offer right away to work another 7
I'm
years?
sorry. Why did
Why did
Yaakov? what?
Yaakov offer to work another 7 years?
He
and
had
then
no choice. He had no choice. That was what Lavan gave him. He tricked him, and he's gonna.
No. But Lavan did not say for Rachel you have to work another 7 years.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He says, Vayavo o imo od sheva shanim acherot, pasuk lamed. And you'll work another 7 years. Verse 30,
Um.
and you'll work another 30 years, 7 years.
Oh,
Okay? Okay. You had some question?
Well, we were
I'm
just
sorry.
showing that,
Yeah.
Sister about Yaakov being confused or not, or being.
Vayifka b'makom.
Because on the wedding night in the commentaries, Yaakov's acute spiritual antenna recognized that he was with the partner who was destined for him. And that is why he detected nothing else.
Okay, so that's what you wanted to say, but I don't see it in the text. It's fine. I just don't see that in the text.
But also the word
The-
Vayifka is actually a negative word. All sadness and all negative because.
Some things happen without your control. Yeah, Pega, right, very good. Very good, right. That has the negativity, that connotation of negativity, very good. Okay, we'll pick up next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.